Yes, that's fine. The negotiation is entirely in the hands of my subordinate, Ryan, so please feel free to speak in French. While flashing a malicious smile, Michael glanced at me from the corner of his eye and said, I understood immediately. This was exactly what Michael had been threatening about before the negotiations, that I would end up embarrassed and in tears. Michael had taken on a negotiation in French, which he himself could not handle, and dumped it on me. I was appalled by the despicable nature of this contemptible boss, but I started the negotiation regardless. All in French, of course. What? That's ridiculous. Michael's face turned pale as he was astonished to see me engaging enthusiastically in French with Bernard, the French branch president. I am Ryan. Before I knew it, I had passed the age of 60. I've been working at this company since I graduated from university, always as what you might call a perpetual non-manager. I've always lived off the beaten path when it comes to career advancement. Innately lacking any ambition for promotion or desire for self-display, my values and outlook on life greatly differ from those of the majority. I knew there were not a few people who sneered at me behind my back, calling me perpetual non-manager or useless, but I didn't care about such things at all. As long as I can do meaningful and fulfilling work until I retire, that's fine by me. If I were to roughly ruminate on my life, I was born and raised in a small town on the West Coast, growing up there until I graduated from high school. My father was a fisherman, and my mother worked at the fish market. Raised in a close-knit fishing community, I learned firsthand the value of helping each other out in times of need. During middle and high school, I was part of the baseball team, and in my senior year, we won the state championship. I even made it to the Nationals, playing as the fourth batter. I was somewhat celebrated, though being center stage was never my preference. That might have been the most spotlight I ever got in my life's theater. After retiring from baseball in high school, I studied hard and got into a renowned university in New York, majoring in foreign languages. During my university years, I worked part-time jobs to support myself, but I also studied diligently. Initially lacking in ambition, I planned to become a scholar in my field of study. I had passed the entrance exams for graduate school, but just before I could pursue further studies, a life-altering event occurred. My father suddenly passed away. With the sudden loss of the breadwinner, my family had no means to support my graduate studies. I had to urgently change my plans, starting my job search at the last minute, when most hiring had already finished. Luckily, I managed to get into my current company, which was still doing additional recruitment. Since then, I've worked in various departments and branches of the company, both domestically and internationally, for about 37 to 38 years. In my personal life, I married a junior from my university club when I was 27, but while I was on a solo assignment abroad, my wife became involved with another man, leading to divorce. This put an end to our brief 4-year marriage. Since then, soured on married life, I decided to live true to myself, prioritizing my own pace above all. In fact, while I have achieved much in various departments at work, I declined any promotional positions that came my way. The reason was simply that I did not want to disrupt my pace by clinging to a company role. With my divorce and no family obligations, some in the company didn't want to entrust me with responsible positions, a sentiment I shared. Thus, even at this age, I remain a perpetual non-manager. With this creed, I'm looking forward to enjoying my work and finishing my career in the next 4 or 5 years. One day, as part of the new changes in my sales development section, Michael was transferred in as the new section chief. Despite being only 27 and in his 5th year at the company, Michael had made a rapid rise through impressive sales achievements. His rapid promotion had been the subject of much gossip within the company. Hearing from other employees about how amazing he is and his passion for work is extraordinary. I too was secretly looking forward to meeting Michael. On the first day of the new regime, after Michael finished his introductory speech to the department, he came over to me. I greeted him with, "I look forward to working with you." However, Michael just snorted and ignored my greeting. Then he said this, "Are you Ryan, famously known as the perpetual non-manager clunker? Aren't you embarrassed to still be a novice at your age? You're like a walking example of incompetence." With a spiteful smirk on his face, he didn't even try to hide his disdain when we first met. Instead, looking down on me and spewing venom right away. Let me be clear from the start, I'm young, competent, and I don't compromise. I won't go easy on a clunker like you who drags the team down. From today, put some spirit into that old body of yours to avoid getting fired." Having been enthusiastic about meeting him because I thought he was dedicated to his work, actually seeing his true nature was a huge letdown and disappointment. So this is the kind of low character who climbs the corporate ladder fast. I was disillusioned with him and also began to question the company's flawed evaluation system. The atmosphere in our department clearly changed after he became the new section manager. Not for the better, but for the worse. The air became unnecessarily tense. This change was undoubtedly due to Michael's unnecessary edginess and the extreme pressure of perform or you're out. While I remained unaffected thanks to my independent connections and sales skills, the younger employees were visibly shaken by Michael. Thrown off their game and exposed to daily stress. Such a strained atmosphere, if it continued, would surely break someone eventually. Unable to stand it any longer, I once said to him, "Michael, I understand the focus on performance, but why not trust your subordinates more and let them work in their own ways? If this continues, someone is going to crack, you know?" I meant it as solid advice, but my words seemed to wound his excessively high pride, and he snapped. "What? Who do you think you are? Are you more important than me, the manager? Ha? A perpetual non-manager clunker. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong." He became furious and lashed out at me with tremendous force. What I intended as helpful advice completely backfired. From then on, his behavior only got worse. He really was small-minded, incapable of considering others' feelings, and not fit to lead. Surely he wanted to show me up by taking on more sales, securing new contracts, or landing big deals. It seemed that was his intention. Among these were contracts with overseas companies, new to our firm. At first glance, his flashy expansion of sales channels earned praise from those within the company who didn't know the inner workings, with remarks like, "Michael is amazing." However, when I reviewed the details of the contracts he had aggressively secured, I became worried. They all involved excessive services that led to unavoidable extra costs. And none of them would yield good results for either party in the long run. Every contract was set up such that, though it might look good short-term, it would inevitably lead to major issues and potential failure as the relationship progressed. His style was typical of someone who chased after immediate numbers, regardless of the consequences. However, Michael, unconcerned, triumphantly gloated with a smug look on his face. Leaning in close to my face, he taunted, "How about that? This is the proof of my capabilities. If you have time to criticize others' methods, why don't you bring in more deals before you talk big?" His words were a blatant jab, provoking me further. "Understood. I'll bring in a big negotiation," I replied and later reported to him, now my manager, that I had secured a big deal. Upon reading the proposal, he surprisingly said, "Wow. Not bad for a clunker. You know what? This looks interesting. So I'll take over the negotiation myself," and just like that, he snatched away the promising deal I had set up. "Furthermore," he said, "I've set up this negotiation, but I don't like it, so I'm giving it to you. Go in my place, and do it in French." Well, do your best. Handing me a reckless negotiation he had arranged on a whim with an American subsidiary of a French company we had never dealt with before. It was a blatantly impossible negotiation. Later, Michael went to the good deal he had stolen from me, all pompous and confident. But it was a disaster. He was thoroughly humiliated by the other party and returned defeated. Even after returning to the office, I saw Michael lashing out and hitting objects, exclaiming, "Damn it," I dared to ask him. "Oh? What happened to that deal you took from me? That was quite a lucrative offer, wasn't it?" Glaring at me, Michael shouted. "Lucrative deal? Far from it. It was a complete disaster of a negotiation. Don't ask me about it. I don't even want to remember it." Internally, I was smirking. The so-called lucrative deal was with a major trading company. In fact, it was the large corporation where my brother worked. And the person in charge of negotiations on their side was my brother. I had already informed my brother of the facts in advance. That is, Michael, our section chief who would be the business partner today, is a person of the worst character. He has a selfish, domineering personality that looks down on his subordinates in any way possible. He is a person who has climbed the corporate ladder with a forceful and self-serving sales policy. And making a contract through Michael would ultimately not benefit both companies in the future. Such were the matters. Therefore, in case there is a need for transactions in the future, I added that I would sincerely handle it and make contracts that are beneficial for both parties, so this time, assess Michael with your discretion. And if you think it's no good, do not hesitate to decline. Armed with the knowledge I had provided, my brother engaged with Michael, confirmed his despicable and untrustworthy character, and thoroughly criticized him, leading to the breakdown of the negotiation. Michael, his pride wounded and feeling bitter, took it out on his subordinates even more than usual to relieve his stress. Naturally, his hostility was directed towards me as well. "Hey, Ryan, you're definitely going to embarrass yourself and fail at that French company deal. There's no way you can succeed in such a negotiation. Please, Ryan, don't come back crying. Oh, I just had a great idea. I want to see you embarrass yourself and get upset, so as your supervisor, I'll accompany you to the negotiation." Incredibly, the spiteful Michael decided to tag along as an observer in my negotiation. On the day of the negotiation, Michael and I were escorted to the conference room of the other company. Shortly after, Bernard, the French president of the American subsidiary, and his American assistant, who seemed to be his secretary, entered the meeting room. "Welcome, and thank you for coming today." As agreed, to avoid any minor nuances or discrepancies, today's negotiation with President Bernard will be conducted entirely in French, if that's all right with you? This was new to me. Michael hadn't mentioned anything about this at all. I inadvertently looked at Michael sitting next to me, who, with a malicious grin, leaned in and responded to the secretary. "Yes, that's fine. The negotiation is entirely in the hands of my subordinate, Ryan, so please feel free to speak in French." I thought, I see. This was what he had been threatening me with before, that I would end up embarrassed and in tears during this negotiation. He had taken on a negotiation in French, which he himself couldn't handle, and dumped it on me. What a rotten bully he was, I thought again with contempt for him. I distributed the documents I had prepared for the day to the other party and began the negotiation. All in French, of course. Impressed by my fluent French, President Bernard was very pleased, and the conversation flowed well. Watching Michael's face twist in astonishment and turn pale as he sat beside me was amusing. Ultimately, the conversation in French went so well that President Bernard, liking me a lot on the spot, agreed to a contract with our company. Contrary to Michael's expectations, the negotiation was a huge success. As soon as we left the other company's building, Michael confronted me, exclaiming, "Why? How could something like this happen?" I struggled to suppress my contempt for the despicable man as I explained. I told him that I had majored in foreign languages in university and was proficient in several languages. During my university days, I had studied French and Spanish extensively. Additionally, a long-standing client, President Ginsburg, whom I had gotten to know since joining the company, loved French cuisine. So, when I first thought about how to get along with President Ginsburg, I decided to learn about his favorite French dishes to make a connection. And so on. Afterward, I delved deeper into studying French, which I had begun in university, and improved to the point where I could converse fluently. Almost like a native speaker. Michael scoffed, "It's amazing you spend so much time and effort on something that doesn't lead to money or promotion. That's why you're still a non-manager at your age." I replied, "Promotion, huh? Let me be clear for once. I don't care about promotion. What's important to me is the sense of fulfillment and achievement I get through my work. The sense of being useful to our clients and partners, that's why I do this job." And, like this, I'd been building trustworthy relationships with business partners over the years. For the first time, I honestly expressed my true feelings to Michael. He looked stunned for a while, as if struck by lightning, then seemed lost in thought, eventually becoming a shell of his former self. Something must have struck a chord deep inside him. Seeing his dejected appearance, I thought to myself, maybe there's still a chance to redeem this guy. After a moment of thought, I asked him, "Michael, you've climbed the career ladder at an unusual speed. But can you recite the names of all the clients and contact persons you've dealt with up until you came to this section? Furthermore, can you describe their personalities and preferences? Startled by my question, Michael looked back at me. And then, with a serious expression, he tried to remember. No, I can't remember. As he held his head in frustration, I offered him a coffee and said, when you're too focused on numbers, profits, and contract details, you tend to forget what's truly important, the people. Michael, looking as if he had realized something important for the first time, began to confess solemnly. I've only ever thought about my own benefits, only short-term benefits, just looking for performance to boost my own career. Now I realize I've got nothing left. I can't remember anything. Not even the names of the clients. Ryan, I haven't built any real relationships of trust like you have. To his realization and dismay, I replied compassionately. That's the eagerness of youth. If your way of self-realization is through climbing the corporate ladder, then it's understandable given your age. You're still in your 20s after all. But Michael, it's also important to act with consideration for others. However, you still have the honesty to reflect on your mistakes and learn from them. That's a big relief. It's not too late. You're competent enough. If you make the right adjustments, you can definitely become a great manager. He listened intently to my advice. And, as if his past spitefulness were a lie, he nodded earnestly. From then on, he changed as if he were a different person, becoming humble and sincere. So much so that our fellow department members were almost weirded out by the transformation. He also shifted his approach to work, following my advice to first consider the feelings and positions of others, which quickly made him a trusted figure among our clients. Initially skeptical, other subordinates and colleagues, realizing his genuine change, began to open up and trust him. To this day, he occasionally invites me out for drinks one-on-one, excessively thanking me for the advice I gave him back then. He had come to painfully understand the importance of building trust, albeit belatedly. The old foolish me really believed that Ryan was genuinely incompetent. I was truly an idiot. There isn't a more capable employee than Ryan. But you really don't want to climb the corporate ladder, do you? A slightly tipsy Michael said after downing a beer. I'm just happy working at my own pace. If I became a manager or director, I'd have to succumb to numbers and pressure. I'd rather quit if it came to that. As I reiterated my life philosophy and ruminated on it, I washed down some exceptionally tasty fried chicken with a beer. Looking at the rejuvenated Michael, lively and shining with enthusiasm for work every day, I was truly glad I could convey what matters. It was also the moment I first realized that I'd probably work for these meaningful human connections. Feeling these modest joys of everyday life motivated me to keep up the good work tomorrow and beyond, reaffirming my commitment to my job.